you're a wealthy man. If I take away 99% of your wealth...
When Ali left, I gave away 90% of what I made. I was happier.
Mo Gawdat,
the former chief business officer of Google X,
an AI expert,
and
best-selling author.
Do you think this is an emergency?
I don't like the word. There is a point of no return, and we're getting closer and closer to 10 years ago, my wonderful son, who was 21, was diagnosed with a simple appendix inflammation and was supposed to be 4 minutes in the operating room. It ended up being 4 hours, and then we lost him.
My new baseline of happiness in life has gone from here to here.
So how does one become more lucky?
Be open to what the world is giving you.
Next time, let's talk about manifesting as well.
I don't believe in that.
You don't believe in that?
Not in the way it's sold. This is the Lululemon of the reality.
Now, have you mastered this philosophy? Are you happy?
Depends on how you define happiness. I'm probably one of the happiest people alive. 98.6% of all couples break up. We've built such an unfair society to women.
Now that you've gone on this path that also Buddha went down, are you finding the same things that he's found? I don't have the heart to turn off this song, Mo.
That's actually quite thoughtful of you. So it's one of the big sins, and I broke up with people because of that.
What?
Yeah. If you stop a Pink Floyd song midway, just
right
speaks to your judgment,
right?
Yeah.
So you broke up with a girl for stopping a Pink Floyd song.
I did break up with someone for lesser reasons, but yes.
For lesser reasons.
Yeah.
Because that's a big reason, stopping a Pink Floyd song.
I'd probably say depending on the song.
Okay. This one's my favorite. I would say.
Definitely is up there.
Is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think most people will think of Comfortably Numb as their
yes, that's a really good one.
Song of all time.
Yeah. See, my dad got me into George Floyd. George Floyd.
What's George Floyd?
What is going on in my memory right now? George Floyd. George Michael.
George Michael. Yeah, okay.
My dad got me into George Michael, Pink, and Bob Marley.
Okay.
My dad saw Bob Marley when he was alive and stuff
way.
like that. Yeah, he went to... my dad's a hippie. My dad's a big hippie.
Okay.
You know, what do you think of hippies? I feel like you have a hippie heart.
It depends on how you define a hippie, I think. I mean, is a hippie someone who is carefree and high and free love and all of that? That's not me. I don't think that's probably the right way to live, if you ask me. But if you say a hippie is someone that sees through the reality of how important all of the noise that the modern world has created, and accordingly just gives up on all of that noise, then that's a wise person. I think hippiness in itself has like everything else in the modern world, I think it has a Californian image to it. Like yoga, there is, being a Californian yogi or a real yogi. And if you follow the Lululemon, I'm holding the mat under my armpit, walking around, Instagram reels, yoga, then I think by definition that's not really what yoga is about. And so in that case, if you take that yoga, it's probably not the best yoga. But if you take the essence of it and the idea of balance and the idea of silence and the idea of time to care for yourself and so many other things, you'd probably say yoga is amazing, right? I think hippiness holds the same clarification to its name that would probably make it amazing or make it a total fad.
I agree. I think I am personally a mixture between capitalistic and a hippie. I'm like a capitalistic hippie.
Okay.
Right? Because my dad wasn't a hippie, you're right. The first thing of just not doing it. Trump's building here as well, wow.
No, Trump has always had a brand here with the muck. even before his first presidency. So
Yeah.
this was supposed to be, I think, the Trump golf course or something.
Uh-huh.
Because that suddenly somehow adds so much value to a golf course. You see the same point, huh?
Yeah.
The same point is that humanity is so gullible
Yeah.
that we have to associate egocentric things around everything to be able to associate with it.
I've heard the scrambled eggs, the truffle scrambled eggs at Trump golf course is the best in Dubai.
Could be. Don't like truffles and don't like eggs. So
You don't like eggs?
I have
You have no idea.
I have no
Oh,
way
wow.
of judging that.
Okay. By the way, Mo Gawdat, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, Mo.
Hi.
Thank you for being on the podcast. We kind of went into it. I got you a coffee because it was already too late.
Okay.
When you said to me, "Don't worry," I said it's too late. So
Okay. Which one did
that
you?
one's is your one, yeah. And there's
Okay.
water in the door as well.
Okay.
Now, when I picked you up, you said to me, "Interesting choice of car." You've had 16 cars.
Yes, sir. I mean, in my lifetime, I probably cannot count anymore. But at a point in time, I had 16 cars.
At the one time.
Yeah.
Which one was your favorite?
Oh,
Honestly.
I have a very, very strong appreciation to a point in Bentley's history where they built a few cars in a row, I think starting with the Turbo R, where they somehow did everything wrong in a way that created a very interesting car. And I think they did one that was called the Arnage T, and I had one of those. Very cheap, actually. It's probably one of the cheapest luxury cars you can ever buy used. And I just loved that car. The T for turbo, when you pushed that accelerator, it just behaved very unlike any other car on the planet. And I always had an affinity to the Arnage. I bought 4 of them. I would buy it and then sell it and then buy it and then sell it and then buy it and then sell it. And even today, I still most of the time drive around in a 2001 Arnage.
Your book, Sold for Happy. If you were to buy a brand new Bentley, would that make you happier?
Definitely not.
So it would make you happier to buy an older Bentley compared to buying a new Bentley?
Oh, 100%. Are you kidding?
Huh. Because the common thought is the opposite to that, buying
100%.
a brand new Bentley.
Yeah, 100%. So look, I mean, there are quite a few complexities to this. One is, of course, what image do people who buy brand new, very expensive cars want to look like? I mean, the one thing I dislike most about driving those beautifully restored cars is I don't want to be seen in them, because I don't want to be misunderstood for someone who's trying to be fancy.
You still have...
This is, by the way, the very first time I ever speak about cars on a podcast.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, good thing this podcast is done in a car.
No, that's a good point. Should have expected that. Yeah.
Okay, so you still haven't told me your raw. I want you to look at me. Do you have a brother?
I do, yeah.
I'm your brother's son. You're my uncle, okay? I want you to tell me...
Good man. I love my brother's son.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because you know my uncle, Dariush, and my cousin Ali,
Yeah.
right?
I love Dariush and Ali, actually. Yeah.
So we're family. So I want you to tell me, like we're family, what do you think of this car? I give you permission to be direct.
Yeah. It's a overpriced Mercedes S-Class.
And they just put a Maybach sticker on it.
Yeah, so if I would have loved if you had bought an S-Class.
But S-Class doesn't have an extended wheelbase.
Yeah, it's not very uncomfortable in a normal one. It's normally...
No.
Yeah. And if you were looking for an extended wheelbase, I mean, the question really is, what are you communicating? Okay? If you wanted the best for an extended wheelbase, in my view, it would have been an Audi A8.
Yeah. Okay, but here's the thing.
Return on investments wise, I mean, price performance.
Return on investment wise, I don't care, because for me, it's a true luxury, true comfortability.
Then you should have bought a Rolls-Royce Phantom.
Yeah.
which is a much more extended wheelbase, much more luxurious and dead cheap,
Yes.
and actually quite easy to maintain.
Very expensive.
No,
They're very expensive.
no. If you take a Series 1 Phantom after BMW, you probably can get that for 180 to 100 today.
US?
Dirhams.
What? What year is this?
Older ones, 2004, 2005.
Yeah, of course, older ones. Yeah.
But
for the
that's-
same year as this car, for the
Which-
same year as
which
the
year is
Maybach,
this one?
2020. 2020, you're looking at
Yeah.
2 million dirhams
Yeah.
for Rolls Royce.
Easy for that.
Easy.
But-
and
but-
this was 400,000 dirhams.
Yeah,
Which is a good price, I thought.
and a similar S-Class would have been 220, and a similar, A8L would have been 170, maybe.
Yeah.
Again, it's a question of what are you trying to communicate.
So,
I would have really felt very uncomfortable in a Rolls Royce, though.
if you did a podcast in Rolls Royce,
Yeah, why? Because I think that would sort of almost lose the essence of the conversation for the luxury of it.
yeah,
It's almost a very strong statement of, this is a very posh, very fancy thing,
Yeah.
which I think a Maybach gives a little of over a Mercedes. I mean, again, you have to remember, you're talking to a serious engineer.
yeah,
So most of my decisions are made on numbers and performance,
Yes.
and right? And unless you add that tiny bit, I mean, I don't know how to say that without upsetting you. It's a bit of a Louis Vuitton bag.
I
right?
want you to upset me.
It's a bit of a branded bag, this car, right? It's
okay.
exactly like any other bag,
Yeah.
just with a lovely logo on it.
Yeah.
This is exactly like an S-Class,
Yeah,
with a lovely logo on
with
it.
a logo.
With a lovely logo that we actually associate with less than a Mercedes logo.
You can't get a V12 in an S class.
We're not driving at the speed of a V12, and your audience wouldn't have felt that. And by the way,
Why do you have to hit me with logic like that?
most V12 Mercedeses in history, perhaps other than the 128 the R129. Do you remember the S classes? There were SLs. Most people would agree that the most sought after SL in Mercedes history was the R129, which had a few very interesting engine configurations. They had a 600 on it. That probably would be the only one. Of course, and now recently, more recently, the S. All of the AMG, 63 engines. But in those times, the 600 was always paired with a very heavy car. So you had a V12, but it was more a V12 for luxury, to give you that power at a very low torque, so that you don't feel that the engine is screaming to get you anywhere,
Yeah.
so that it's a little quieter.
Yeah.
You can also do that in an S-Class with better sound insulation, which they do. So
Yes.
why are we
correct,
saying all
correct.
of this? I mean,
but but listen, this is a podcast. We can talk about anything.
Okay,
But
I've never been asked to talk about cars on a podcast.
the return on investment for this car to make it a podcast studio is
It's nothing. It's
nothing.
a clever idea, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, my studio costs much more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, of course, I used it for many years.
Yeah.
If you just calculate the annual rent of the studio, the equipment that you put in there, definitely this is a very efficient studio.
Yeah, so that's why try to spend a little bit less on S-Class, why not just get the Maybach? I bought this car for the intention of that, because before I had a Maserati, and before that,
Quattroporte.
yes, and
That's an amazing misunderstood car.
yeah.
Oh my God,
Part of the
but-
Ferrari family.
No, it's a Ferrari that works
Yeah.
most of the time, or more of the time than a
Yes.
Ferrari. But the thing is, probably Quattroporte would be very noisy for your podcast.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
best engine noise ever.
Best engine, especially in the mornings with a cold
my
start.
God, yeah.
Cold start were the best. I would always record, get my phone out. And before that, I had a Bentley Flying Spur.
I love a flying spur. Actually,
Yeah.
a flying spur would be a very interesting choice for this.
Yes. But I did the research. It takes 14 cowbacks to make a Flying Spur. Everything you touch is leather.
I love the environmentalists when they make those statements. Well, those cows were killed to be eaten.
Yeah. What are you gonna do with the skin?
So it's actually a good thing to use the skin.
Yeah.
It is. If we are so cautious about cows, then I think we need to go back to the original human diet of meat once a week or twice a week.
Yeah.
This is where the cows suffer, basically.
Well, we know eggs are not in danger from you. Eggs are safe from you.
and red meat, actually. I haven't eaten red meat since 1995.
Wow, why? 1995.
I think it was ideology at the time. But then somehow my physiology changed. I remember must have been the year 2000, I think. So I hadn't been eating meat for a very long time, 5 years maybe. And I arrived in Istanbul. If I remember at the time, Emirates used to arrive like closer to midnight. So I was at the hotel at 2 a.m., starving. So I looked at room service. I said, I was looking for anything warm at all because I hadn't eaten all day. And so anyway, I ended up ordering a burger. And I kid you not, I spent 4 days in my room unable to move.
Oh, wow.
My body was like, what is this? I don't know what to do with this, right? And somehow, I think that was a very strong signal to my physiology that red meat is not for me anymore. I'm not saying anyone should be on or off red meat, but for a very long time I was close to vegan almost. But then when in my mid 40s, and my brother, who is a very well-known surgeon in Egypt, top of his discipline, used to really get angry at me, saying, you need 1 gram of protein for every kilogram of body weight, right? Yeah. And I was like, that's crap. I've lived without that for the last 10 years, so I'm sure it's not a true fact. Anyway, I then I had been injured in my early 30s, stopped working out until my 40s. In my 40s, I'm back to working out, constantly sore. Like I work out, a muscle group, and then 4 days later, I'm back to that muscle group and still sore. And then one day I was using my FitnessPal, looking at my, dietary input basically. And on the 3rd protein shake of that day, the app says, you've just met your protein requirements for today. I was like, what the hell? Does that mean for the last 25 years I hadn't, right? And so I started to actually increase my protein intake to meet that, especially on workout days. And I'd be recovered in a day and a half. So my muscles would go back to normal in a day and a half. And I realized afterwards that, then I started to add a bit of animal protein, not really red meat anymore. But it basically makes all the difference, because I think we humans probably need to eat. I mean, people will advocate being vegan, which is possible, and you can become vegan and a bodybuilder, but you have to work out to sort of burn 4,000 calories a day or something, which my lifestyle wouldn't allow, because vegan protein will always have some caloric input in it that is higher than animal protein if you want for the same amount of protein. And so I'm back now to a bit of animal protein.
So you eat fish and chicken?
I eat fish and chicken.
Okay.
Very, very selectively. Okay. I don't enjoy them, sadly, but...
You don't enjoy chicken? What about shish tawuk with garlic sauce?
My God.
Come on, shish tawuk with garlic.
I'm not garlic is one of my actual food intolerances.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, which makes life so complicated.
So complicated.
But
But you're not allergic?
I mean, it depends on where you draw the line, really. But if I eat garlic in Korea, where they put a lot of it and don't really cook it too deep, I'd probably die.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
bad.
Yeah, I'd get. I mean, I fainted on a Korean Airlines once because of that. Yeah.
Going back to my point about the car, I believe true luxury is comfortability. If I wanted to design a bag, it would be a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or something like that. But for me, but but that would be for people to enjoy, not for me. I'm on the inside.
I'm not disagreeing. An S-Class would have given you the same exact comfortability. It literally is a very well-dressed S-Class.
Yeah, with a bigger engine.
There are S63s actually.
Yes, and
of this same era.
Yeah, and they extended wheelbase too.
Yeah, S63s are probably even a better engine because AMG pushes the
Yeah.
total.
Well, Mo, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
after I mean, who does that? It's like getting to someone's home and saying, "Oh, this sucks." I really am very sorry. You should have. I mean, why did you start me on cars?
What do you mean? No, listen. The thing is, with me, it's a casual podcast. We can talk about anything. Is there anything you want to? How are you doing? How are you really doing? Not the camera answer. How are you really doing?
How am I doing? I am in my most interesting years. It's shocking, really, because you get to my age and you think that you've learned everything. I've learned nothing, man. I'm learning so much. I met this wonderful woman last October. And I have to admit, I was married for 21 years to a woman that I loved for 6 years before that, still love today. Then we got separated 2015. And, I went out into the...
1 year after your son died.
1 year after Ali, yeah.
That would have been a volatile 2 years for you then, dealing with this.
They normally they associate. They say 70% of all couples will break up after after the death of a child. I think we were. I remember at that time the kids had already gone to university. It was, you see, life is made up of seasons. I have calculated that I fell in love with Nibel 6 times.
Okay.
6 seasons, 6 different couples. And every time we change, you sort of look at this, and go like, where's the one I love? And then you sort of go like, oh my God, but this one is so cute. I want this one. And it was the 7th season, if you ask me. And Ali's departure, of course, made it difficult for us to readjust and find that romantic love again. Remember, love is not just romantic love. So we had just broken up, and so I went out into that meat market with no experience whatsoever, literally dating like a 14-year-old. And I'm an honest man. I genuinely never, dated a woman that I didn't want to build a life with. But because the last time I had made a choice of which woman fits my life was, 27 years earlier, at least 27 to 37 years earlier, I was making amazing choices of incredible women who really enriched my life, but were not a good fit, or I was not a good fit for them, for some reason or the other, and somehow going through all of this, I sort of had come to the point where I felt this was it, that, this kind of crazy love, if you want, irrational love that makes you stay with a woman is something that you can only do in your early years, because everyone is going to be a challenge. But then I met Hannah, and Hannah is just unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, it's not that we don't. Hannah, I believe, I don't want to make that claim in public, but she's definitely a higher IQ than I am. But if I tell you the number I think she is, you'd be shocked. She's an incredibly intelligent woman, but also really a woman. So very feminine, incredible in every way. And she's a therapist, so you know how therapists are. She constantly reflects on her own self and, what she's learning in life and so on. It's such an incredible addition to my life. And I have to say that her presence in my life, and I believe my presence in hers, has triggered sort of a new season of learning, observing things in a very different light, which normally is what relationships, other than just sleeping around, to be honest. I never slept around, and I actually don't appreciate someone who is careless enough to sleep around, unless they are honest and upfront about it, that this is just for fun. You know, but there are several sides to a relationship, and I think at the core of it, again, in the modern world, we've forgotten the real reason. Mm-hmm. So actually, Hannah and I are starting a community that we call Finders Keepers by June. Hopefully, we're going to do a quick workshop in March, and then we're going to do a full community initiative in June. And Finders Keepers is an attempt to explain love and romance in that very weird mix of me being the engineer, the economist, the numbers guy, the algorithms guy, and Hannah being the therapist.
Wow.
Yeah, so Hannah, my view is that the process is broken, and that just like a stock market or a business venture, if you understand how the process works, you can make it work in your favor if you want. Hannah's view as a therapist is that everything that happens to you in a relationship is a reflection of who you are, and that your traumas and your choices in life and your fears and your complexities basically lead you to make it or break it. It's not the other guy or the other girl. It's you, right? And I think that mix makes it quite interesting. But I think in our relationship as well, we were chatting about it yesterday, and we were saying that it's quite interesting because basically it's almost as if we're exploring our own love in public.
Wow.
But you see, the thing is, her presence in my life highlighted to me something that completely shocked me, honestly, which is how far I've taken my own abilities to the point where it became almost superhuman. That I didn't notice that at all. So, I do probably between 90 to 100 takeoffs and landings a year. I fly definitely more than all captains and all pursers.
Wow.
For sure.
You just got back, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, January, February are slow months in general. But if you take a month like May, for example, I'd probably be doing 12 takeoffs and landing in every 5 working days.
Wow.
Yeah, it is quite. I think one very important shift that happened in my life when Ali left our world, and I set myself 1 billion happy as a target, is that I no longer think that I'm doing things. I feel that things are being done through me. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of am in very interesting flow. I don't really, feel stressed, if you want. But at my age and, with the inhuman amounts of effort I put in, it starts to become quite visible through that relationship with a wonderful person that can highlight those things to you, that I could probably do better in taking care of myself and enjoying life a little more. And, again, going back to cars, my typical joy was in restoring them. Think about that. The engineer loves the work of creating a beautiful piece of art.
You're being creative.
And mechanical art, right? But then I never drove them. I just finished the restoration and then put them in a storage place and then sold them at a loss, right? And in the last year, I started to suddenly say, "Oh my God!" But I should admire the quality of the work I've done. And again, I mean, I drive very little, but isn't it supposed to be that way? That I wake up in the morning, on the days where I'm here, and just go downstairs, start the cars. If I'm going to a meeting, take a car that I restored instead of my typical everyday car. And those little things put you in I'm very clearly in a very different season now. It's not my retirement season yet, but it's what I call a season of permission. And permission means, I am very blessed. I've been given, I think of myself as the luckiest man alive, honestly.
Wow.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Come on. I mean, born and raised in Egypt, public school, public university in Egypt. Then I become chief business officer of Google X. What is that? Like, arrogant people will say, oh yeah, of course I did it. No, I didn't. There was so much luck on the way. There was, it is definitely, I mean, when I became chief business officer of Google X 2013, I can guarantee you that I could probably prove it mathematically that there must have been 250,000 Americans in California, near California, that qualified for that job more than me.
But they chose you.
I don't know if they chose me or the events of life chose me. I mean, think about it, huh? I was at the time 7 years vice president of emerging markets. I'd started half of Google's operations worldwide. And this really is my forte. I love to build new things and, built an amazing, amazing model. And starting Google in a country is not opening a sales office. That was actually, that's the easy part. And we normally did that 2 or 3 years later. We started by making Google understand the language and the culture and the tradition and, having the technology work really well, but then also having the internet work well, having the concept of e-commerce work well, having the language understanding work well for the entire internet, not just for Google, so that there is locally produced content and. So by that time, you would have changed the life of the citizens in that country. And then you would walk in and add, advertising, Google ads on top of it. And so Google would start to make money. And I have done that for 7 years. But then it had started to slow down and become more of a monotonous job where you have to look at CRM and annoying charts and stuff like that. So I went to my boss and I said, look, this has been wonderful. I think I'm going to go do another thing. You take 2-3 months, find someone else. I'll take 2-3 months, find something else or not. And then I'll hand over properly and leave. And as I had that conversation, the following week we were in a Google event for the vice presidents of Google called Golden Circle, if I remember correctly. And
This is in Silicon Valley.
In California, yeah. And on stage, the Loon team, Mike Cassidy. Loon was a project where Google X was trying to use high altitude balloons to offer internet coverage all over the world. They get on stage and they speak about the project. That's even before anyone in the world heard about Loon, because it was highly confidential at the time. But for that circle, we knew everything that was happening. And so Mike and Astro at the time was the sort of the technical lead of Google X. They come off stage, and at the time Google had that idea of 20% time, so you can dedicate a day a week to anything you want. So I walk to them and I simply say, hey, by the way, I spent my entire life in emerging markets and in telco. I know this shit really well. And I'm more than happy to give you my 20% time. They don't know me. I don't know them. X is this very secretive lab of, we're not going to tell anyone anything. Why are we here talking to anyone anyway? And, you could see in their eyes them, they're saying, yeah, nice, but can we please walk now? We don't want to know anything about you. At that moment, Megan Smith, who is a very dear friend, used to be their CTO. I worked with Megan extensively in Africa. We're really close, but we also did amazing things together. Just pops out of nowhere, jumps literally in the air, hugs me, and says, oh my God, Mo, and then looks at Astro and Mike and say, this is the best person in Google. I'm like, Megan, that's so nice, right? But to them, they're like, oh, best person in Google is just is offering to work with us. 2 minutes later, Sergey Brin, and I worked with Sergey really closely during the Arab Spring because Sergey wanted to ensure that, you know, the internet remained open. We had, of course, no views on any politics at all, but, you know, Google believed in organizing the world's information and making it accessible and useful. So part of our mission was to make sure that information continued. So, you know, Sergey would call every evening and say, are we operating well? Is there everything okay? And so on. And so I got to know Sergey really well. He's our co-founder. He pops up and he goes like, oh my God, Mo, it's so good to see you. Now he is their boss.
Wow.
Right? Talk about luck.
Luck.
Right? And then Sergey asks me, so, you know, why don't you come to Mountain View every now and then? I was like, yeah, I'm going to be there next week. He says, you have to come by in X, right? Come on, seriously. So anyway, I show up in X the next week, right? The only door in the entire Google campus that my card didn't open, okay? And as soon as I sit down, Sergey pops up again and goes like, you know what, you should really come work with us here. Come on, you know, and so many, I can tell you so many
instances like that.
Yeah, strokes of absolute luck, right?
But everybody gets lucky.
Everybody gets lucky.
Everybody has luck.
I wrote you know, one of the books I didn't publish. I wrote back in 2015 called Understanding Fate. And you know, of course, to try and explain why my son, in 2017 I wrote it. You know, why specifically my son is the one that gets, you know, that dies, right? So trying to understand fate, and of course a big part of fate is luck. So I ran this experiment, you know, trying to understand luck, where basically I said to myself, you know, is luck random at all? And I said, okay, I'm going to give myself a target to find US dollar cents, you know, the bronze ones. You know, at the time I was dating someone who lived in New York. So I said, okay, I'm going to look for US dollar cents. That's a representation of finding luck, right? Within the next 3 weeks, I found 117 of them, those cents. Okay. One time I found 16 of them next to each other, probably a homeless person or something. But here's the funny bit. Of the 117, around 40 were found in the US. The rest were found all over the world. On the streets of Delhi, in Dubai airport, in the UK. And they were not just coins, they were US dollar cents. So I said, that's really weird. As soon as I turned my attention to finding US dollar cents, they start to pop up everywhere. So I said, maybe I should push that experiment a little. I'm going to look for accessories, jewelry and accessories. The next morning, I was in New York at the time. I was on Broadway. I don't know if you've been.
I used to live in New York.
Yeah, so massive, huh? Like, there must be like 70,000 people that walk that street every day.
Yeah.
Maybe every hour, I don't know. Anyway, I'm on Broadway, my back to the wall, looking at what clearly looks like a diamond ring, okay? I saw it, but I decided not to pick it up. I stood to the wall and counted the number of people that walk over it, you know, that walked over it.
And this is Broadway, this is not the Diamond District.
This is Broadway, right? Now, you have to calculate that every single one of those people had exactly the same probability of finding it that I did. They literally walked over it, right? But I was looking for it.
They weren't.
Yes, and to me that actually is a very interesting definition of luck, right? So for most of us, you have the same probability of finding luck as everyone else. But for some of us, we are primed to find it. We're primed to open to the world when it presents it to us.
So how does one become more lucky? Don't look for luck, but look for something. Always be looking for something.
Be open to what the world is giving you, right? So you know, I think the easiest starting point is to make your answer yes until there is a reason for a no, not no until there is a reason for a yes. Okay? So just simply by saying, you know, again, let's talk about relationships. If you're looking for someone to truly be in a relationship with, you're much more likely to find that person if you are out and about, okay? You're more likely if you tell the world that you're looking for that person. You're more likely to find the person that matches if you advertise yourself as who you truly are, and then be open to people who will show up in your life, at least for one date, right? And, most of what I hear people struggling with today is, dating apps suck and men are not to be trusted and everyone wants to jump everyone and leave. So I might as well just simply, abandon that whole thing. And I have friends who haven't been on a date for like 6 months, right? And I'm like, how do you expect to find someone if you want to be, and of course the romantic view is he's going to show up, somehow, some way the universe is going to send them to me. Just like it sent that diamond ring to everyone, but they were not open to it. They were not just looking for it, but they were not open to the concept that there could be a diamond ring on Broadway. Do you understand?
Wow. Very interesting point. I mean, for me, what I'm hearing is it always comes back down to ego. If I go around telling people that all the girls in Dubai are after money, then none of them want a relationship, I'm going to go look for those girls to fulfill my prophecy and feed my ego to say, see, I told you I was right.
100%. That was one of my best learnings ever. I attended something called the Landmark Forum once. I was in a relationship. She wanted to go. I said, yeah, fine, let's go. It's a good thing for us. At the beginning of the forum, the instructors are saying, describe yourself in one sentence. So you get those people standing up. I'm, a family man and a father and another, right? Until one person stands up and says, I'm a superhero that life tends to send challenges to, but is always able to solve those challenges for myself and others. And the instructor said, and so if life wants to please you, what do you expect life to send your way? Okay, very interesting question, because basically, if you define yourself as the one that challenges will always chase, if life doesn't send you challenges, you've completely lost your identity. Okay, so you're literally advertising to the world, send me challenges. Okay, and so what does the world do? It pleases you. It goes like, yeah, sure, I'll send you challenges. Why are you complaining then when I send them to you, right? And I think that's when it comes to love and relationships, I think this is truly, in my mind, the biggest mistake, is that we go out and advertise what we don't want, okay? We advertise that we believe everyone is out there to get us. So what do? We get people to reinforce that belief. Okay? If you advertise, for example, that you're looking for a steady relationship, but you're doing that in a club, that's the wrong ad. It's basically, hey, I'm here in the exact place where people are not looking for a steady relationship. So that's my ad, okay? But then in the fine print down there, I'll say, oh, but I'm looking for a steady relationship, right? And, you should have guessed that yourself, right? And it's quite interesting. When you really start to look into what we bring into our life, this is not the talk of manifestation and energy and all of that stuff. This is practical. Your attitude informs your behavior informs those who show up, or those things that show up in your life. And as a result, you create your own reality.
What about that guy that's watching this right now? He went through a breakup, right? For a long time, he was with one girl, breakup, and now he's saying, Mo, 80% of divorces are initiated by women. 70% of the relationship. Well, I mean, what's the statistics on divorce? 52%? But that 52% is not, that's a lagging indicator, because that's our parents' generation. That's not our generation. Our generation that's coming, the people that are getting married now, they're the generation that have been exposed to Tinder and Hinge and all these dating apps. So surely, because it's so much more accessible, people are so quickly, we're dating now to learn how to break up. That's it. We're learning how to break up differently, right? So now, when our generation comes in, and it hits the statistics for divorce rates, Mo, you know, she left me. 80% of divorce initiated by women. It's
so one of every two couples gets divorced. Okay.
Currently at the current rate.
Yeah, that's a very deceiving statistic.
Why?
98.6% of all couples break up.
Wow.
98.6. Okay, so if you count, again, I wrote Finders Keepers, the book that we're building at least my part of the community on top of. I wrote that book 7 times. Okay, I don't publish most of what I write, and the way you should do the mathematics of relationships is to count the average number of lifetime relationships per person. Okay, if you, let's say the average number in a specific country is 18. Right? That means 17 have ended out of the 18. That's if the 18 is likely to continue. So basically the 18th one is 50-50. All of the others are 100% lost. Okay? And you do that math and it's 98.6%. This is great news. You know why?
Why?
Because there is 1.4% that succeed. Right? And more interestingly, how many entrepreneurs shut down their business? And yet we continue to start businesses, right?
So what you're saying is, okay, fine, get yourself into a relationship with the highly probable chance that you will break up, but that's just a part of life.
No, I'm saying much more than that. I'm saying, number one, if you are interested in the joys of a different kind of love, which I will openly say is much more enriching than jumping around and trying different booties, okay? Then you have to admit that 50% of the reason, at least, why this is not happening is you.
Say that one more time.
If you are interested in a really nurturing, hold on, humanity is not made, unlike most of the books that are written about the topic, to jump around like mad. Jumping around like mad is very threatening for the stability of humanity. Okay? What we want is we want to feel nurtured. Right? So when I wrote Finders Keepers the first time, I said dating has 7 reasons. I call them the perfects. Okay? PPRFCTS. P is passion. So most of us date just to sleep with someone. Okay? Partnership is the second P. We want someone that we can rely on, that can guide us and help us and support us through life, right? R is we want romance. That's a very different thing than love, right? Romance is the excitement and uncertainty. So the excitement that's blended with uncertainty. So I'm sort of, she loves me not, or will he bring me flowers? Oh my God, he took me on a trip, right? All of that is romance, and it is a very unusual cocktail of hormones, okay? That stage of romance is one of the few stages where you get all of the happiness, of the feel-good hormones, not the happiness hormones. You get a bit of dopamine, a bit of oxytocin, and so on, right? So it's a very, very enticing feeling. We want that romance, okay? And for some reason, we want it to last forever. But we also want friendship, the F. We want the C, which is companionship, which work against romance, because romance is excitement mixed with uncertainty. Once the uncertainty goes away, the romance declines, and then friendship and companionship increase, right? Then we want tenderness, the touch, the feel, the care, the tenderness, the idea that, I'm with someone, not necessarily to fuck like rabbits every day, but to actually feel a deep human connection that's much more fulfilling for a human than just a sexual connection. And then the S is support, which most of us, when you say women are behind me here in Dubai because of my money, in an interesting way, I think that's a very unfair statement. Because you know what, in my generation, I would not have accepted a woman that doesn't rely a little bit on my money. Honestly, you know what? We've built such an unfair society to women. And over the years, the real deal, until the Industrial Revolution and capitalism screwed up the system, the real deal was that the family unit had two roles, right? One of them was to work and earn money, which, by the way, is the easiest role, okay? And the other is to nurture and build life and build a home and build, stability and build love and build, which is, interestingly, more than a full-time job at the time, which required that the man works and the woman didn't, or one of the family members worked. Post-World War II, Americanism and capitalism basically said, hey, you know what? We can double the workforce for the same price. Because if you actually look at the median family income today, two parents working, from a purchasing power point of view, adjusted for inflation, it's exactly the same that it was in the in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Right? So we basically, capitalism got an additional worker for free.
Yeah.
Okay? Go through all of those lies, and I'll go back to the core point. And the core point is, if what I'm looking for is that other form of connection to a human that goes beyond dating, having a good time, and then leaving, okay? For me to be able to do that, I have to assume that the reason the last 10 attempts didn't work is at least 50% me. At least 50%. I haven't managed this well. So I, as an entrepreneur, co-founded 27 businesses in my life, right? Of those 27 businesses, I can guarantee you, every single one of them had 100% chance of failing, unless I did the right things. Do you understand that? If I get into a relationship, and I want that relationship to work, the starting point of that relationship is it's 100% going to fail. By me learning to look into me and my issues and what I need to change and how I understand a different form of communication and how I am willing to accept that my partner is different than I am, I get myself to 10%, okay? And then I get to 20% success probability. And I keep improving. Of course, my partner too has to come closer until, say each of us is at 40% of the way. And basically we look into each other's eyes and say, you know what, then remaining 20% don't matter. And basically say the remaining 20% don't matter. So think about that as a venture, okay? A venture of, here is what my 27 startups delivered. Forget the success and the ones that were sold and the ones that were, made me money and so on. What they really delivered is an ability for me that makes the next startup a success. That's what I bought with 27 trials. Now, you said then, you then spoke about dating. Dating is exactly the same. Exactly the same, right? If you go to date with the objective of, oh my God, I'd really like to experience that beautiful woman, right? That's what you're gonna get. You're gonna experience that beautiful woman, but she's gonna experience you in some way or another too, okay? It becomes an exchange, a meat market, that women as much as men get traumatized by, right? If on the other hand, you tell yourself, and I told you openly, I did date like a 14-year-old, but I honestly and genuinely was attempting my best to find love, right? And I did come really close many times with tiny differences. Like I of course not try to mention names, but there were a few attempts that were actually close, but were not a perfect match, and so they didn't work.
Did you ever meet a girl that would say, you thought to yourself immediately, I'm not going to find love with her, but still try to have sex with her to see if you can love her after?
I think that's very dishonest. So I'll give you one of my very eye-opening periods of that era. I have a lot of spiritual practices that are very important to me. So I go on, for example, on a 40 days silent retreat once a year.
Wow.
I have attempted a couple of monkhoods periods where I basically would say, okay, you know what, for the next 9 months, I'm on complete celibacy vow. And basically a monk in many other ways, like a very minimalist life and so on. And I found those very, very, very useful for me. But for one of them, the time before last, I was on Stephen Bartlett's show. We had this very open conversation. Stephen is a very, very good friend. And so I somehow forget there are cameras. And he asked me, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a monk for the next 9 months. And my God, I was bombarded with messages from women. Okay? I don't understand why.
You're a catch.
Yeah, one is he's a catch. He has the discipline, maybe.
You're a catch.
The other is I'm a challenge. Oh, he's a monk until he sees me. The third is I'm safe. Understand? This could probably, and this to my heart was quite thrilling, actually. That, can you believe it? That women would want to go on a date with the monk because he's safe, because all of the other men are trying to abuse them, right? Anyway, so I at first I said, no, I'm a monk. And then one of them, which actually is still a very good friend of mine today, said, then let's go on a platonic date. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, to connect on so many other levels than sexuality. Are you okay with that? Was such an eye-opening statement for me because, I wrote afterwards a little article that I never published that there are 20 ways a man and a woman can enjoy themselves together. Only 2 of them are sex and intimacy, right? And in a very, very interesting way, I said, yes. But here's the tricky, interesting bit. Because I basically said to everyone, that I went on a platonic date with, and I went on like 6 or something. Look, this, if it ever turns into something physical, it's going to be in June.
In June?
Yeah, mostly 9 months or 8 months later. Would you be willing to wait?
You said this to her?
To everyone that I went on a platonic date with.
Okay.
And I was very genuinely going to stay until June. This is it. I made my vow. I'm going to stay.
You're just out there teasing these women, Mo. You're just teasing them.
But hold on. Yeah, of course. Of course, that was actually quite a challenge for most of them. But interestingly, I broke up with every single one of them before I touched her.
Oh, wow.
Do you understand? The thing is, modern dating puts so much pressure on a woman and on a man differently, right? On the man, okay, if she turns you on, you're an animal. So you have no way of controlling yourself anymore. And she seems to be okay with it. So we might as well just go ahead with it. We'll figure it out later if we are going to be in love or not. Very irresponsible. Okay?
You didn't have the urge, I really want to kiss this one tonight.
Listen, for a woman, you know what's motivating all of this is fear. Most of the time. Of course, there are women that are very open to with their sexuality and they enjoy this and so on. But most women who will sleep with you before they are ready, they simply are afraid of the process of, if I don't allow him to come closer to me by the 3rd date, he's likely going to walk away. And to most of my lady friends, I say, and if you're looking for a serious relationship, that would be the best outcome. 100%. If he walks away, then he was going to walk away anyway. It's just he would have enjoyed you for 6 months before he walked away, or 6 days, right? And then left, and then you have to pick up the pieces and then choose again to take 6 months off and then try to date one more time. The worst thing for the process, right? Here is the thing. The thing is, it depends on what we want to be. And I ask people openly for honesty. Honesty meaning there was a period in my funny dating life where I was polyamorous. Okay? I simply said, look, I am moving between countries. I'm not going to be able to have a steady relationship for the next, 6 to 8 months. if you want to be with me, please understand that you're not going to be the only one, and that it is not yet a conversation around a serious relationship. Okay? I did that for 4 months once, and everyone was very happy. Why? Because there was honesty up front. So if a man goes, no, I'm not sure there is love yet, but I think there is a very strong physical attraction, and he's honorable enough to say that. He's honorable enough to say that. Okay? I salute him. But somehow you get scared that if you say that, she's going to walk away. Okay? She also gets scared that if she says no, you're going to walk away. It's what goes around comes around, sadly. And I think the reality of all of it is that we, both sides, end up in a horrible, horrible, horrible mess of dating and love and romance today.
Well, that's the direction it's all going. Everybody's got way too much trauma. We're not supposed to have this much relationship trauma.
Correct. Yeah. And so again, as per Hannah's, I wish Hannah was here to teach her side, but you know,
we only have 2 seats.
Yeah, she
can sit on your lap.
Oh my God. Oh, Hannah would be lovely here. So think about it, huh? You're absolutely right, but that's your own doing. The trauma that you're feeling is your at least 50% your own doing. Okay, so think about it this way: the you know, we started our conversation with cars. Okay, dating as a market is a question of finding a very rare, and I can take you through the mathematics. It would blow you away. Hannah's probability is 1 in 8,373,000 women.
Wow.
Okay, and I can show you the mathematics. This is accurate math.
Wow.
Okay, only with 7 criteria. Right?
Wow.
Now, so you're looking for that one-off. The only real comparison you can have to that is a Daimler Super 8, a very little known car. Okay, or a McLaren F1.
Yeah.
Okay. Why?
P1.
No, P1 has made a few more actually. So the thing about the Daimler Super 8 is it was that version of the Jaguar of the time that was literally made 580 times, of which only 384 were left-hand drive.
Okay.
So if you're looking for one today, that's a similar probability to looking for Hannah. It's a very rare occasion to find the one that actually suits your life. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you looked in the general market, one, it's impossible to find that car. And anyone that advertised that car in the general market, people were like, are you stupid? Jaguars are supposed to be 7,000 dirhams eventually. You know, why are you advertising this one for 70, right? Why? Because they don't understand the value of that very rare species, okay? If you take dating similarly, the person that you're looking for is such a rare person that you have to go to the places where that person exists, okay? And when they show up, you have to treat them with that rarity. And then you have to inspect them like a monk. Did you understand that? So the thing is, once you tell yourself, but I'm not purchasing one of the 384, unless it's the perfect one, because there is only one of those that will ever show up in my life, and you just allow yourself a little bit of time.
Have you ever talked about this before?
That's what Finders Keepers is going to be all about. But,
on a podcast, I haven't heard you talk
on podcasts, I've never spoken about. I mean, I spoke with Stephen once about love and romance. But it's, I have so many topics that I cover that, it's almost hard to...
Because you're really breaking it down and it's making sense to me. If you're looking for a rare girl, you can't be looking in the general market.
You can't be, okay? And you can't be negotiating at the terms of the general market, okay? And so interestingly... you may hate me because you're the man side of this deal, okay? So interestingly, but believe it or not, this applies so much to men as it applies to women. Because most and other genders, by the way, most of the time I use men and women because I'm straight, so these are my relation. This is what I relate to, by the way. Most of the time, men get traumatized by relationships as much as women do, okay? Even though it appears that men are the predators, but there is such an imbalance in the market of dating that most men who, 80%, 20% of men get 80% of women, because women by definition, date upwards.
Hypergamy.
Yeah, and so if you're rich and you're or if you're excessively good looking, more than the average, or if you're a bit too obnoxious, so you come across as a very confident bad boy, this is what attracts 80% of the women. So that imbalance makes 80% of the men highly frustrated, okay? Because they're good men, and they're trying harder to be good men, but they're not getting anything as a reward because 20% of the men are attracting all the women. Now, here's the interesting bit. The interesting bit is if you want to avoid that trauma, my advice simply is, and it's a horrible thing to say, is 1 period. Okay?
1 period?
Yeah. I'd advise people to date for at least a full month before they become intimate. Okay? And if they do that for a full month before they become intimate, they will have charted all of the different moods of he's busy and stressed at work, she's, having a conflict with her boss, he is a little tired after I don't know what, she is going through her biological cycle and maybe a bit irritated today, and so on and so on and so on. And then, and you would have had maybe 7, 8, 10, 11 dinners or coffees or times or walks together where you would have gotten to know if this is the car to buy or not, right? And most women will tell me, no man will wait for me for 4 weeks. And I say, I had a personal experience that taught me so much, that if a woman openly declares her intention, he will probably wait and even try harder, okay? So my advice to women is to simply say, well, not if, but when. Oh my God, you're so sexy. When we're together, I think it's going to be fireworks, but I'm not ready. Are you willing to make me ready? Not are you willing to wait for me to be ready? Okay? And that really shows you who is a good man, because a good man will put in the effort, sorry to say, to foreplay with his woman. Okay? More interestingly, the opposite is true. So believe it or not, I think any man who truly wants to, even in the 20%, believe it or not, and sadly I'd have to say I was part of the 20% for a reasonable amount of my life. Even in the 20%, if you want to avoid junk food, and by junk I mean someone that you're going to, sorry for my English, consume, who's not going to be nourishing for you, okay? You might as well spend a little more time vetting who do you let into your life, okay? So that you don't get traumatized. And more interestingly, as my late son Habibi used to say, when you're naked inside someone, a part of them comes inside you.
Of course.
And so you're really almost entirely reconfiguring your own soul every time. I think that's actually, I know most men will go like, he must be gay. No, I'm not, okay? But there is such a joy in sort of picking the exact right meal at the right time that is healthy and nutritious. And you may not be perfectly right every time, but if you just spend 4 weeks, 4 weeks to find someone, that's not that big of a deal, honestly.
Those men that would say that's gay, very soon they're going to find that they've given their energy to so many women, and they're going to be in a very dark place.
And you know what's really interesting is that junk, if you let junk, and by the way, I'm not a genius either, I went through my junk phase, okay? you'll get such trauma. If I tell you some of the stories I went through.
Your whole phase?
Oh my, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had horrible traumas, like horrible experiences. Or a man like me who is highly confident, Middle Eastern beard, bald head, deep voice. Oh my God, I was like a little kid crying from the trauma, right? Why? Because I wouldn't take 4 weeks of attempting to find out if that person fits my life. My biggest advice, if you want the process to work, and then I can take you through the mathematics of it, because you see, 4 weeks, if you're looking for a long-term relationship, is the most efficient use of time, because you could end up realizing on date 4, like most of the time when I did on my platonic relationships, my monk relationships, on date 4, I'd go like, my God, you're an amazing woman, right? I would have wanted to sleep with you on date 1 for sure, but after 4 dates, we both realize we're not a good match, right? And interestingly, if on date 4, that's like a week and a half later, you've wasted a week and a half, not 6 months looking for someone, then dating for another month, then breaking up for another month, then trying to recover for another 6 months, then starting again for 6 months. That just doesn't make any sense. Is the most efficient way to run through that process is to avoid intimacy in respect for the fact that junk food is not good for you.
Going back to that guy that's looking at you with his heart broken, saying, Mo, as you said, 98.4% of relationships.
98.6.
98.6% of relationships, and I just went through a relationship that ended. I'm still hurting. My heart's still broken. She's with my best friend. She's got the kid. She won't let me see my son. I don't want to go through that anymore.
Good.
It's like saying, Mo, we're going to go skydiving, but 98.6% of the time, the parachute doesn't open.
That's no.
Right? Would you say, okay, fine, don't get into a relationship, that's reasonable? Or would you say, no, you're making a mistake?
I say roll the dice 98.6% of the time before you jump out of the plane. You see, most people don't understand probabilities properly, okay? If I told you that out of 6 times you roll the dice, you're gonna get a 6. On average, probabilities will work that way, right? Most people don't get this. It's only 1 in 6 probability on the first roll, right? If you roll twice, on the third roll, what's the probability?
3 out of 6.
2, yeah, so on your third one is 3, okay? So you basically get, so on your first one, you have to throw 6 times to get there, okay? On your second, then third one, you only have a probability of 1 in 4. Right? Because you have 4 rolls left. Okay? So it's now up to 25%. Then on the fourth one,
I see. You start having a better chance.
You have 3 more rolls, okay, to get one of which a 6. So your probability is 33%, higher than the 25. When you have 2 left, your probability is 50%.
Yes.
And when you're rolling the 6th time, unless the odds are not in your favor this time, your probability is 100%.
Yes.
So if your chances to find a person that fits you is 98.6%, is 1.4% basically, that means roll the 99 times without making each of them take you 6 months or 6 years or leave you with a child. Okay? Roll by going out on dates, by getting to meet people, by getting to understand what you want, what you don't want, what they don't want, what you do right, what you do wrong, what you deserve, what you can improve, what your traumas are, how to know the person that you're looking for, and how to break up with someone without breaking their heart if they're not what you're looking for. And by the way, more interestingly, how to keep them if they are the 1.4. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
I proposed to Hannah, believe it or not, she didn't notice it, 4 days after we got together.
4 days you proposed, after 4
Yeah,
days.
she didn't get it, so I proposed again 4 weeks after.
So wait.
And I married her 48 days after we met.
Wow.
Right? That's because I rolled the 100 dice.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And because I knew exactly what I wanted, and I knew exactly how rare that very unusual species is, okay, for me. And by the way, how rare I am for her.
In a perfect world, Mo, that's exactly how it should be done. But there is people out there that are disconnected with their self-worth and what they deserve, and they want to feed their ego by sleeping with as many women as possible.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to a park, when you leave the park, do you pour petrol on the park and set it on fire? No. Somebody else is going to come back and enjoy the park. That's what they're doing. They're traumatizing women so the next guy can't be with her.
This is such an interesting statement, okay? So there are so many angles to this. One angle is, I don't feel my self-worth, so I'm gonna sleep with as many women as I want. By the way, does that make you feel your self-worth more? It doesn't, by the way. It leaves you very empty inside, okay? And occasionally, you start to get the wrong impression of what love and relationships are and what, you know, and what women actually are. And so you feel almost tainted by that experience, even though your doodle is working really well. Okay? Interesting, huh? The other side of this is the opposite, huh? There are men and women who are feeling, again, the challenge of insecurity in a way that will let them sleep with anyone just to be accepted, just to be touched, just to be, right? Neither of that is true. Here is my point of view. My son, Habibi Ali, Allah yarhamak ya Ali. Habibi, he was 9 when we moved him to his 11th school, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a crazy career-driven person in my young years. And there were also, I mean, to be honest, some out of control moves. Anyway, Ali goes to school, meets this kid, George, his name. He comes after day 1, and Ali was a very, I wouldn't say introvert, but he was a very careful boy. Okay, so he comes home after the first day. He says, "I met this new guy. We're gonna be friends. His name is George." And so he describes George. Ali Habibi, my son, was a tiny little Zen monk. He was born a Zen monk, lived a Zen monk, and died a Zen monk. Okay? George was the devil himself. Okay?
Wow.
You know those kids that were full of energy, running around all the time, completely obnoxious to everyone, breaking everything.
Narcissist.
No, you wouldn't say that about a kid. He was just very energetic, let's put it this way.
Like a Jack Russell.
Sort of, yeah? Ali comes home, that was a Monday. He comes home on Thursday and he says, Papa, I told George that I don't want to be his friend anymore. So if he calls, please tell him, remind him that we don't want to be friends.
Wow.
Okay? I said, why, Ali? And before he answers, the phone rings. It's George. You know, at the time we had landlines.
Yeah.
So, you know, he basically, Ali didn't, I mean, I had a mobile, but we had the landline. That was the way kids communicated.
I remember those days.
Yes, exactly. And so it's George. I pick up and I say, hi, and he says, hi, is Ali there? I say, yes, but, and I'm about to say he doesn't want to meet you. George says, okay, I'm coming. Right? And then 7 minutes later, he's in front of our home. His mom left, and now we have George, right? So Ali, you know, struts down the stairs, goes to him and says, hi, George. Like I told you, I don't want to be friends anymore. But the Xbox is in there. You can play as long as you want, you know, and if you want, the kitchen is there and so on. And then he goes back upstairs, right? So, you know, I call George's mom on the same phone number and I say, hey, I'm really sorry, but Ali is not able to be with George today. Can you come back and pick him up? 5 minutes later, George is gone. I sit then with that Zen monk and I say, Master, teach me, okay? And he goes, look, Papa, I realized that George was very different than me. And he's not a bad boy, he just takes a lot of my energy, okay? And so I realized...
This is a 9-year-old.
9-year-old, right? He said, I realized that if I were to be his friend, not only will I feel very tired at the end of every day, but those who like me for who I am are not going to be my friends because they don't want to be with George. So I thought maybe it's wise as of next week to be without a friend so that people show up in school that like a quiet boy like me. And he was right. You know, on Monday he met Jack, which is a lifetime friend. Even today, I love Jack, right? Then they met Max, and they met, everyone. They just came together, and they had this group of friends that stayed until Ali was 18 and left to university, right? Now, go back to dating. If you go to any porn site, you will realize there is nothing called beautiful, okay? That there is someone for everyone. There is someone for everyone. If you're a grandma, for some reason, some 20-year-olds love that, okay? If you're a little curvy, some love that. If you're a little skinny, some love that. If you're into BDSM, some love that. And accordingly, by the way, if you're into Pink Floyd, there will be someone that loves this. And by the way, by definition, someone that hates it, okay? So in Ali's calculation, it doesn't matter who you are or what you pretend to be, 80% of the world is going to dislike you, and 20% will love you exactly for who you are, right? Then change the 20% and appear to be something else, a different 80% will hate you, and a different 20% will like you. You're not going to get a single person more. You know what that means? It means that basically there is someone for everyone. And whoever you are, there's absolutely no reason why you should feel insecure, okay? I'll give a personal example. In my young years, one of my biggest traumas was that I had a massive crush on my best friend who was completely into bad boys, okay? And I was a very good boy. I was always a very good boy. To the point that at a point in time I said, you're smart, you can be an asshole too, right?
So you tried to be a bad boy?
I couldn't. I just could not be a bad boy, right? And so my trauma for most of my life, even though I married the most incredible woman in the whole group, my first wife, okay? The trauma remained that being a good boy is not good enough, okay? But you know what? I have Hannah because I am a good man, okay? And as a matter of fact, I tend to believe that the reason why Hannah and I are working so well is because I'm a good man, okay? So there are girls out there that don't want to be with me, but the one I want wants to be with me. Do you understand? So here's the trick. The trick is, if your reason for dating for all of those relationships is to serve your insecurity, you're looking in the wrong pool, okay? If you go to the right pool, if you're a nerd who loves to read, don't go to a club. Go to a library. Okay, and someone will look at you and go, oh my God, an angel, because that's what they want, right? And then suddenly, I can guarantee you, I've dated supermodels. They were as insecure as the curviest or shortest or tallest or whatever it's the best woman I've ever been with. Insecurity is an issue of being surrounded by the wrong crowd. There will always be 80% that will dislike you. Just find the 20%. And then you'll feel fine. And in that case, by the way, you're finding the one. Just find someone who loves you exactly as you are.
That was beautiful, by the way. Very well said. I don't think you've ever shared that story.
I've never shared Ali's story. I have so many stories about it.
But it's so nice that you were able to break down the statistics of how many friends he had and then bring that into a story and frame it this way that you have. So
he was wise.
Yeah.
He really was wise.
Yeah. He was your son.
No, he was my teacher in many ways, actually. Which a lot of people say that our kids are generally our teachers. I know that for a fact, if we open our minds and hearts. But Ali specifically was and Aya, my daughter, is also an incredible teacher. Just teaching me maybe the feminine side. Aya actually was probably the biggest change in my later seasons. She may not even remember that, but she came to me, I think it was 2019. We were in Montreal. And she said, Papa, you're not emotionally, 2018. She said, Papa, you're not emotionally available for me. I was like, I'm really sorry. Like an engineer, I was like, I don't understand the term. What does it mean? And she started to explain emotionally available to me, which, by the way, again, is quite a challenge because men get conditioned all our lives to be tough and, to control our emotions and in a very interesting way, most women, if a man is too emotional, that would probably turn them off somehow, right? And yet we're asked to be emotionally available, but there is an interesting balance, huh? And Aya guided me through this, which again is an amazing example of what having the proper polarity in your life for something more than intimacy and fun, right? I mean, my daughter to me is a wonderful feminine figure that is completely in touch with her feminine side and that I can talk to learn about things that a man like me, Middle Eastern, raised in the Middle East, may have missed in his earlier seasons, right? So yeah, I mean, between them, I definitely found my top teachers.
No, you're a great man,
Kind.
and I don't feel you have an ego at all. And if you did have
everyone does.
Yes, but your ego is very different because first of all, you haven't said one thing to me that said to me you have an ego. But if you did have an ego, you wouldn't be open to advice. And if your daughter's telling you this and this and this, you're very versatile to be able to bend and be able to take on advice. And God, that's interesting. Let me break that down. How is that? You're very curious and you're willing to bend your habits to see other people's perspectives.
I think that's selfish if you really think about it. It's quite interesting. Again, you can take entrepreneurship or restoring cars or whatever. The one thing that most people forget is that we go into every project in our life with the project as the objective, right? So you start up and you start a startup and the startup is the objective. Like, I want to make this successful and sell it for I don't know what. You buy a new car and that car is the objective. We forget that the underlying objective is you, okay? How do you become a car buyer? Is a process of buying a car. How do you know how long to wait? What is the right price? How do you know what are the issues that you don't want to buy? How do you know your preferences, right? Your startup, you start a startup, how do you become a better entrepreneur is the real objective. That startup is just one more in the process of going to school. And by the way, going on dates, the date itself is not the objective at all. The date is part of school, so that when the real thing shows up, you know how to handle it, right? And I think most people don't realize. Are you a video gamer?
No.
Oh man, what's wrong with you?
I got a joke in my head, but I don't want to say it. I was going to say I got laid in high school.
Oh, interesting. Could be true. Got distracted. I
was chasing women when I was in high school. I didn't really.
I can picture that this would take you away from video gaming. I'm a very serious video gamer, and I think what part of my current book, I'm writing a book called Alive. That's about life in the age of artificial intelligence. And there is a section of it about simulation theory, which I really, really think that this is a video game, what we're living in. Mm-hmm. But you see, the thing about gamers, and when you get to a certain level, like you become a real legendary top, 1 in a million kind of gamer, gaming becomes very different. So there is your objective is not to finish the level. Your objective is not to win. Most real gamers don't care if they win or not. Mm-hmm. Okay. Your objective becomes, how do you become a better gamer? Okay, so often, which actually was the point where I became sort of the kind of gamer that I am. Often you come to a point where you say, oh my God, I did so well on this last 60 seconds. I'm going to rewind and do it again. And then do it again. And then do it again. What you're honing in is your own skills as a gamer, right? And so when you really understand that the only objective you have in life is to become the best gamer you have the potential to become, if life is a game, then suddenly refusing advice becomes the most stupid thing you can ever do. Okay? Because advice might hit your ego, might pain you a little, might contradict your belief or perception of the world. By definition, that's how it is. But by taking it, okay, you've learned to be a better gamer. You've learned to improve a tiny bit on yourself, even, by the way, by refusing it. Okay, you've learned to become a better gamer because from a probabilities point of view, you took one layer of the problem definition away. You know, you're told, for example, that you're too short, and then someone tells you, hey, by the way, you know, this and that, and you discover, no, you're not. I'm short, but not the shortest. Great. That takes that layer of thinking out of your head, and so that problem doesn't feature anymore. Okay. And you know, and I think that's why it's the smartest thing you can do. And interestingly, if you start to take advice and analyze it with curiosity and acceptance, not as a, you know, as an insult, you know, 10 years in, 20 years in, or in my case, 58 years in, suddenly a lot of the layers of complexity of life go away because you've considered those things when they were told to you. And solving life is a bit like an n-square problem, if you know what I mean. Every layer of complexity doesn't double the complexity, it multiplies it by itself. So, you know, if you're solving a problem with 1 degree of complexity, you know, the more layers you create, the more you multiply it by itself. If it has 10 degrees of complexity, the next layer is not 20, then the next layer is 100. And then the next layer is 1,000. So by removing a layer, you reduce the complexity of things by an order of magnitude. And the only way you can do that is to accept when people tell you something you don't know about yourself. Analyze it with no ego, and then decide whether you include it, remove the layer, or refuse it, remove the layer, but you've done it objectively.
That's your superpower.
You think so?
That's your superpower.
If it was, then I would be very happy that it is.
That's your superpower. While you were talking to me, I was thinking, you know the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius?
Oh my God, yeah.
You need a book, you need to make a book like that because you're versatile. And I feel like you could, because with Marcus Aurelius' book Meditations, there's no chapters, there's just 1, 2, 3, it's just thoughts, right?
Yeah.
That's what you need to create. Because you're very versatile, you can have philosophies from different areas of life.
So how about we drive to Oman and then you write the book? I tell you everything I know. Yeah.
All right, you talk. Stephen Butler was talking at Mind Valley on the weekend.
I love this man.
I was invited to go, and they asked him when he was on stage. They asked him, out of all the guests you've done, what's one guest that said something to you that had a profound effect on you? And he said, Mo Gawdat, and I believe he lives around this. He said, I believe he lives in this area as well, in this region of the world. And he said, you know, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at your glasses, your black shirt, you're looking at me, you're looking at the signage. Our perception in life is different, right? Your perception. He said, Mo showed me how to almost move my perception and see their perception. Do you remember that conversation?
I do remember the conversation, actually, yeah.
That was the number one thing that had the most profound...
It was very much from the heart. So when I met Stephen the first time, I was publishing Scary Smart, if I remember correctly. Was it Scary Smart? Yeah. One of my books. I don't remember. 2021. I don't remember. Anyway, my books are a very weird form of being because books don't sell on their merit. Books sell in my current situation, you know, I sell because my followers know me. But generally, books sell because of a marketing campaign, right? If you hear about a book on a morning show and you go like, oh, that's interesting, you haven't read it yet, and then you buy it, right? So my marketing campaign, or my PR campaign, if you want, for that book was 29 podcasts in 10 days. Wow. So I did 3 a day.
Wow.
Yeah, and Stephen was number 28. And I was
second last.
Yeah, I was so exhausted.
Of course.
And I had no idea who Stephen was. Actually, at the time, even he wasn't as big as he. I think I was his top hit at the time. I'm not really sure. And I was so exhausted.
You were the most shared in Europe.
I was the most shared worldwide on Apple Podcasts.
On worldwide?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I would say me and Steven, because we have that wonderful conversation dynamic. But the interesting thing is, because I was so tired, I was completely talking from the heart. I had no brain capability to sort of say exactly the right thing, if you want. So it came from the heart, and it reached the heart. I was publishing Scary Smart because, the entire conversation of 2 hours, he's talking about happiness and what happiness means, and I'm like, this is about AI. My book is about AI, but I was so exhausted, I didn't care. Like, I did 27 others. They were amazing. So, and I think that's truly, again, goes back to what I was talking about in terms of advertising, right? Be who you are and speak from the heart, and you will reach the hearts of those that match you. Okay, I think that's the whole idea. That's probably the easiest way to live. It's to just simply be who you are. Work on yourself. And by the way, don't be arrogant. If you say something and people go like, "Oh, this is shitty," go like, "Oh, interesting. Shitty. Why is it shitty?" I remember one of my favorite experiences when I joined Google was how humble Larry and Sergey, our founders, were. That engineering community. We used to have TGIF every Friday. We would get together, eventually around the world. We'd have 8,000 people on a video call. And then one of the engineers would stand up and look at Sergey, for example, and go like, "Sergey, what you just said is stupid, really." And Sergey, in his beautiful demeanor, would go like, "Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think it's stupid?" I'm like, my God, that is so remarkable. Yeah. Right? And so he would give him a set of data that, the calculation was wrong. And Sergey would go like, "Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't calculate it this way before." And then within a minute, another engineer would stand up and look at the first engineer and go like, "You're stupid." And he would provide another set of data that proves the other one wrong. And suddenly it just hits you that there's really no truth. Very few things in life can be looked at as true. Yeah. Okay? Most everything else is in flux. Yeah. Most everything else is your truth. Yeah. Your view of the world might be very different than mine. There are a few scientific facts that even today we shatter every now and then, right? Yeah.
Mo, we've been podcasting for nearly 2 hours. I have not asked one question.
Have you not?
I have not asked one question.
Okay. I've never spoken about cars ever before, and never spoken so much about love and romance. So
we went straight into cars with no question about cars, and we went straight into that, and then from another
what did you want to talk about? Maybe.
I mean, we're not going to have enough time for all my questions, Mo.
Okay.
So when you're traveling next, I'm going to take you to the airport. That's what we should do.
Airport is not a long enough conversation. So let's see how people think of this one. If they like it, we do another one.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, look, we're both in Dubai.
100%.
Even
easy.
If it's
maybe you take my Arnage instead of your.
I don't want to damage it. I've had to cut holes in this car and scratch it up to be able to.
Look at this.
To be able to make this work. But okay.
Great setup though.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I want it to be different.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great setup.
But even if you go into the airport, it's 30 minutes. It's still. I'd rather take you to the airport myself. We have a conversation about one topic.
You're very kind.
And then I'll pick you up, and then we can. Okay. I want to talk to you about happiness.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, listen.
Oh my God. Okay.
I've got so many questions for you. All right. You have no idea. We could talk for days. Jim Carrey said, "I wish everybody could be rich and famous, and get everything they dreamed of, so they can see it's not the answer to happiness." Right. And also Buddha. I mean, I really got. Do you know the story about Buddha? He was part of the royal family. 530 BC, he relinquished his title, and he basically gave away all his jewelry and all his luxuries for slippers and sandals. Yeah. And he went from a rich man to a poor man to find happiness. And I've got his philosophies here. His philosophies are for finding happiness, right? Happiness comes from within. That's one. He's got the 4 noble truths. One of them is Life involves
Life
suffering.
is suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cause of suffering is craving. And an end to suffering, there is an end to suffering. And the eightfold path leads to succession of suffering. So, I mean, we can keep going, you know, detachment, non-detachment. But, you know, he also said in one of his verses, we are seeking happiness from a source which happiness does not exist. Just brings pleasure, temporary pleasure. Because I feel like you've really gone down this road of finding happiness, right? Soul for happy. How closely, now that you've gone on this path that also Buddha went down, are you finding the same things that he's found? Is there a lot of overlap, or is there something further that you've found? What's your journey been?
Look, I mean, the understanding of, so everything that you just said is profound, right? Most of us chase dopamine, not serotonin, okay? Why? Because the world cannot sell you serotonin. So when you're happy, as in my definition of happiness, is calm and peaceful and contented with life as it is, okay? You're flooded with a hormone that is a calmer. Basically, it is, let's put it this way, if you're out in the wild, you get a few very necessary hormones like you know, cortisol and adrenaline that can help you run away from a tiger, fight or flight, okay? You get a few hormones that motivate you to keep the species going, you know, oxytocin, dopamine as a reward hormone. You know, you go out searching for some berries and then you find that tree, you get a tiny jolt of or a bush, you know, you get a tiny jolt of dopamine saying, yes, I did it. Because that dopamine basically says, I like this. This is not related to your immediate survival, but I'm going to make you feel good about it so that you seek more of it. Okay. And then interestingly, you get that hormone that is, you know, what the Chinese farmers refer to as wei wu. Wo wei is the idea that if you plant your rice field and then go messing with it the whole winter, you're probably going to end up with no crop. That sometimes you plant the field, you just do nothing, okay? And that's the best way to go forward. The hormone responsible for that is called serotonin. And serotonin is the result of your mind analyzing your brain, analyzing the world around you, realizing that there is nothing that misses your expectations of safety, of a moderate sense of safety in this world around you. So it tells you, chill, don't do anything. This is good. We want this, right? And that's the feeling of happiness, believe it or not. That's the feeling of, I'm okay with this. I don't want to change anything, right? Now, if you take that feeling and turn it into mathematics, like I always do to try and understand the world, you can go into a very complex equation. My first equation was 19 parameters and logs and, you know, sums and so on. But the true equation is very straightforward. It is your happiness is a comparison between your perception of life and your expectations of how life should be. Simple as that, right? So you're constantly comparing your life today to how you want or wish life to be. And if it falls short, you're unhappy because your brain is saying, this is not what we want. I need you to take action to change this. If it meets your expectations, you're happy, okay? Now, all material things, cars and, you know, the Jim Carrey comment, fame and all of that, they are very effective at getting you dopamine, right? But dopamine is fleeting. The minute you get dopamine in your blood, you need another jolt to feel happy again. And that jolt has to be higher than the previous jolt because your brain receptors downregulate for dopamine. So what ends up happening is those things are empty. They give you a tiny bit of happiness and then you feel empty. So you try more and then you feel empty and then you try harder. So you go from going to a party to going to a wilder party. You go from going to the gym to jumping out of an aeroplane, right? Serotonin, on the other hand, is events minus expectations. Your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should be, okay? So if your expectations from life is, I'm going to buy a fancy car and it's going to make me incredibly happy, and then you buy the fancy car, and it actually makes you, it's exactly what you want, and you're not looking at any other cars, and you're not saying, oh, it's too expensive, and you're not saying, oh my God, I bought the wrong color. That's it. You're okay with life as it is, and you're happy, okay? But you could also say, I'm just gonna need a car to go from A to B. I don't need it to be fancy, and I'm gonna be happy with that. And you get a small car from A to B, and you're happy. When I'm in the UK, Hannah and I have a long distance marriage where, half of our time is split between the UK and the UAE, and sometimes we're not together at all. So when I'm in the UK, I'm only using the tube, right? Fancy cars to me get me stuck in the London traffic, okay? Which doesn't meet my expectations of being stuck in a car for an hour at a time.
Do people not just flock and take photos with you on signatures?
Which is wonderful. So again, that's a very interesting one. Most people will go like, doesn't that annoy you? If my expectation from life is that someone telling me that they like me, and wanting to have a chat with me, if that annoys me, I don't understand what would please me then. Like, who gets the luxury of having a total stranger walk to them and say, man, I love you. Like, my God, I love you back. That's such a privilege. That's such a gift, right? Now, think about it this way. Huh? When I'm on the tube, it's not always the easiest, coziest place, but it's the most efficient way to go from A to B. If my expectation is I want to be in a luxury seat, then I'm disappointed in the tube. If my expectation is I want to be to arrive in the most efficient way, and also to keep my ego in check, by the way, then the tube is the perfect happiness method for me.
But the smell, standing, don't you want to be in the back of a car being chauffeured? You can work on your laptop.
Smell and standing is human.
Yeah,
Did we forget that?
But don't you want to be in the back of your car working, being productive?
I had one of the most privileged stories I heard firsthand.
The smell of the tube, by the way.
From one of my spiritual teachers.
Okay.
Was he, for some strange reason, this man was highly renowned, okay? And then once a week, he would literally take a brush and soap and go wash the toilets of the mosque. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And he basically said it reminds you that you're human. Because when people start to tell you that you're not, some of us would somehow say, look at me, I'm better than all of the other ones. And that's the start of the end, just so that you understand. That's not the start of the end of your ability to teach or your ability to learn, but the start of the end of your ability to be happy. Because once you go down that slope, okay? So when you take your life as events minus expectations, okay? He basically once a week reset his expectations to anything better than cleaning the toilets is wonderful, right? This is what Muslims do in Ramadan. Anything that's better than fasting the whole day, oh my God, I'll take that, right? And so on. And the idea is, unfortunately, in the modern world, we've set expectations that are so unrealistic. Okay, that transportation has to be in the back of a luxury car that's made of 12 hides of cows, right? That, if the car is shaking a little bit, then what is this? If the tube has other people around me, I'm living in a freaking city. There are other people around me. Like, what is that?
You know what this reminds me of? There's a girl that I met at a conference. I really liked her. I said for our first day, I wanted to be something special. I got us 2 tickets to Coldplay concert.
Amazing.
Okay? I love Coldplay.
Yeah.
And I got standing tickets. So we were in the mosh pit and stuff. She started yelling at me.
Complaining
that when I go, I'm usually in VIP boxes or I'm behind the DJ.
Great.
You had me standing with the people
last date,
like everyone else.
Was the last date.
I actually left her and walked to the car without her, and I said, you catch a taxi, I'll pay for it. She's crying. I went around and picked her up. But I didn't even want her in my car afterwards.
Yeah, great strategy.
Yeah.
Right? But you see, that's the point. The point is, if my expectation is I'm going to be at Coldplay, VIP, with servants doing my manicure at the same time, her. I don't do manicures, but basically anything short of that is disappointing. If you're a big fan of Coldplay and you've been searching for tickets for the last 6 weeks and you can't find any, giving them one ticket would have made their life. It's events minus expectations. Okay, so the thing.
So she's already, in this case, she's already at the end of her happiness. She's already the beginning of the end.
She's already deep in the end.
Deep in the end.
Right? So remember, the whole trick is, I'm not saying, diminish your expectations. I'm saying create realistic expectations. So horrible image. I apologize. I'm a human like everyone, okay? I go to the bathroom, I mess shit up, I drop my coffee, this is the expectation. This is the reality of who I am. I am just a struggling soul like everyone, trying to find my way, may have found some insights that may be useful to some people that haven't gotten there yet, but completely lost on 90% of the rest of the insights. I have no clue, right? And when that's your expectations, every bit of data that is given to you, every bit of enlightenment makes your year, right? But this is not me diminishing my expectations just to be happy. This is not me saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to expect to be treated like shit so that if anyone is kind to me, it's an upside. No, I'm expecting realistically that being a person in the public eye, as a public figure, 80% of the people who follow me will like what I say because they chose to follow me, okay? And 20% will hate my guts. It's okay, right?
Now, have you mastered this philosophy? Are you happy? Or is this something ongoing that you need to work on as well?
It depends on how you define happiness. If happiness is what in Arabic we call ar-rida, which is to have that contentment with life as it's presented to you, then I'm probably one of the happiest people alive.
If I take away, you're a wealthy man.
Yeah. Okay.
If I take away 99% of your wealth.
I did that before.
Right?
Yeah, I did that before.
What do you mean you did that before?
When Ali left, I gave away 90% of what I made.
Oh, you did?
More,
you gave away
probably.
More?
Yeah.
To charity?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was happier. So I have a very interesting exercise. I mean, come to my place. My place is a small apartment. I mean, I have 2 apartments, right? But basically, I'm in an apartment.
Do you have shisha?
I don't. But here's the thing. The thing is, I take away, at least my objective is that every Saturday I will give away 10 things in my home.
No way. Every Saturday?
Every single Saturday. You'll be surprised how many Saturdays I'm capable of doing that.
Wow.
Right? There was a stat that I think the average American has 16 million items in their home or something.
Wow.
Some staggering statistic. And when you go back home, count.
Yeah.
Okay, the number of knives and the number of glasses and the number of little cups that you bought sometime for a party but you don't use anymore, and and a million things.
Yeah.
Right. And it's quite interesting. The less you have, the happier you become.
Because the lighter you are.
Because exactly.
In your book, you said these things end up owning you.
100%. They weigh you down. Okay. They take space. They take mind share. They make things complicated.
So if I was to take 90% of your money away,
yeah, go ahead.
Your happiness would be the same?
I'll probably be happier.
So money has no direct correlation with happiness?
It does. If 90% of my money leaves me starving or with my basic needs not met, then I start to get... So statistically, Stanford ran a research that basically said that when people... when you're below the average income of the country that you're living in, every dollar that you earn more will make you happier, right? Okay. Because you get closer to having your ends met, your needs met. But once you cross your basic needs being met, I remember I had a conversation with Larry Page once. At the time he was worth $19 billion, and I said, "So, Larry, what do you do with $19 billion?" And he said, "Well, you buy more toys." That's basically it. Instead of buying a small car, you buy a bigger car. Instead of, You buy a plane, but do you really need a plane? Does a plane contribute to your happiness? No. As a matter of fact, a plane contributes to your comfort, but also your unhappiness, because you have to park it, you have to spend money on it, you have to do the right? So the thing is this. The thing is, money will make you unhappy if you don't have enough of it, but will not make you happier if you have more than enough. Okay? And more than enough will give you dopamine, not serotonin, because then you can buy a Ferrari, not a Toyota. Okay? And a Ferrari will give you a dopamine hit for the first 6 times you drive it, and every time a girl gets into it and wants to sleep with you because of it, right? But then the Ferrari itself has no intrinsic value of happiness, and every time it breaks, which will be quite often, you feel unhappy, right? The other study, which Stephen Bartlett actually had in his book, Happy Sexy Millionaire, was that they did a research, I think it was also Stanford, or one of the California universities. They did a bit of research about asking people how happy they are on a scale of 1 to 10. And then they asked them, how much money do you need to get to 10? Regardless of the income profile, regardless of how they scored the first question, everyone said double. So if they were making $60,000 a year, they said 60 more and I'll be 10. If they were making 600,000 a year, 600 more and they'll be 10. If they were making 6 billion a year, 6 billion more and I'll be 10. Humans are quite interesting, right? Why? Because the more money you have, what happens? The more expectations you create. So it's events minus expectations. If I'm a poor man living in India and I don't expect to eat today, 1 bowl of rice makes me happy. Okay? If I'm a rich man during COVID and I swipe twice and get caviar delivered to my home, okay, I go like, I wanted to be on the seashore to do that, right? It's so interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So, of course, money can make you happier because you can buy more toys. Of course, money can make you happier because you can give it away to people. Of course, money can make you happier because you don't feel worried about, your basic needs and so on. But that's not necessarily the result of money. That's the result of your mindset. You could have all of the money in the world and still worry about your basic needs. And believe it or not, if you know as many billionaires or millionaires as I do, one of the main questions when you ask them, why are you working so hard? He goes like, because I'm not sure what will happen tomorrow. What? You have $160 million. What could happen tomorrow? Okay? Leave 5 of them out of all of your trading and you'll be covered for the rest of your life, right? But no, to them, if I go from 150 to 110, that's a disaster. Why? Because what are you doing with the additional 40? It's not the same. Expectations rise with the money that you have. So he expects now to be able to live within that standard for the rest of his life. He expects to be able to sit in front of his friends and say, I have 10 million more than you.
Yeah, very true. 5 years ago, if you told me the life that I'm living today, if you asked me 5 years ago, what would make you happy? I said, look, being able to travel the world, I wanted to see every nook and cranny of the world. Now I can do that. I live in Dubai. It's the world's airport. I used to travel once every 10 days. I would go somewhere. Now I just can't be bothered. I just can't be bothered getting on a plane, going there, catching a taxi, going to the hotel, unpacking, taking a shower.
So the highest level of that idea of happiness is actually found in travel, right? So a lot of people will say, I'm only happy when I go to that wondrous place. People who really know happiness can be happy in a junkyard. Doesn't make it. It's not what the world offers you has no bearing on how okay you are with life as it is.
Yeah. And now that I've reached what I wanted 5 years ago, I wouldn't say I'm happier.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe back then I was happier.
There you go.
You know?
There you go.
Mo, it's an absolute honor.
I enjoyed it. It was a great drive, by the way. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. You avoided all of the bad bits.
Yeah.
Yes,
you did.
thank you.
It was an honor. I wish I had more time with you.
We'll do that again. If people like it, let them tell you, and then I'm here.
I'm gonna tell you people like it.
No, that would be a bad date. Yeah,
That's toxic.
exactly.
That's toxic. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's you are somebody that I've wanted for. You're not just any guest for me. You're somebody
so
that I've
kind.
wanted for a while, that I envisioned. Next time, let's talk about manifesting as well.
I don't believe in that shit.
You don't believe in that?
Not in the way it's sold. This is the Lululemon of the reality. Basically.
I'll tell you why. Because if you knew how to get to $1 billion, it would be a series of administrative processes to get there, right? I don't know how I'm going to get to $1 billion, but if that's what I want, I'm going to set my compass there. So when I make decisions subconsciously, I make it to get to that goal.
Okay, so you're talking about one angle of it that we can discuss for a very long time that has validity to it, but is explained the wrong way. Okay, so why I say it's the wrong way? It's because a scientist's mind who looks at the scientific method will say there is an observation that leads to a hypothesis. A hypothesis needs a proof to be considered a theory. Okay, that's not what the teachers of manifestation are teaching. Okay, they have an observation. Helen Hansel, won every competition that she ever got into. We don't know how many competitions those are. We don't know if this is, true or not, whatever. Okay, and because of that observation, then the whatever Silva method works. That's not science at all. Okay, an observation could be. So I'll give you a very interesting example of an observation that leads to a hypothesis that has no proof. Reincarnation. Okay, so reincarnation as an observation is some kids come and they can describe things from a past that they didn't live and da. Okay, great observation. I don't disagree with it. If you've observed it repeatedly, great. Okay, a hypothesis is we've lived multiple lives. Okay, they've died, they've come back. Not rejecting this hypothesis. It's one of multiple hypotheses that can explain why that child knows something about the past. Okay, there are many other hypotheses that are equally as far out, okay, that equally don't have a proof. Okay, an angel spoke to them, or the fact that our non-physical form lives outside space-time, so it has access to all of space-time, so they may be able to watch that event through their soul right now, and they have a better soul connection than you and I, so they can actually connect to what their spirit, which resides outside space-time, can see. It could be that total randomness. It could be that someone told them that told their mother that story when they were in the womb, and somehow they retained. I don't know. There could be a million other hypotheses. All of them are non-scientific. Okay, all of them don't follow a proof, and accordingly, none of them should be considered a theory. So this is one angle of the issue of the way manifestation is sold today to the world. It's very unscientific. Okay, I think Joe Dispenza attempts to use science to explain that in a way that I would accept and reasonably relevant to the way I understand it from a quantum physics point of view. But that's not the way most teachers sell it. Okay, the other side of it is that because I cannot tell you, if I want to sell you a car, I cannot tell you, look, this is the best car in the world, but you're going to need a motorcycle as well. Okay, that doesn't make you buy the car. Okay, that complicates the sales process. So most manifestation teachers will sell manifestation as if it's the only thing you need to do. Okay, and that assumes a complete rupture in the wholeness of reality. Okay, so if you assume that reality takes together the yin and yang, the feminine and the masculine, okay, the being and the doing, the feminine is the being, the masculine is the doing. Okay, manifestation is a state of being. Okay, I am going to allow myself to live within that space that is convinced that something is going to show up in my way, in my world. Okay, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And unfortunately, in my view, with a slight bit of anger, this sounds like snake oil salesman. Okay, it's basically telling everyone, hey, just get yourself in the right mindset, and the universe will help. If that was the case, then that would be very unfair for someone like me who's working really hard. Because I can also get myself in the right mindset and work my ass off. Okay? And most manifestation teachers are not mentioning the motorcycle bit. They're just talking about the car. Okay? And I think that's very unfair for the number of people that follow them but don't get what they expect. Okay? And then blame themselves for not following the method, not blame themselves for not doing what is needed for things to happen.
At your age of 58, you don't reflect back and think, I manifested this, I manifested this? You don't think you manifested anything?
I manifested a ton of shit. Manifested everything you can think of.
So you believe in it, you just don't believe the shit they're selling with manifestation. They're wrapping
It's the Lululemon of yoga.
They're wrapping shit in a box and putting manifestation name on it and selling it, basically. Got ya. I see what you mean.
And unfortunately, they're selling it to the weakest victims out there.
Yeah.
The ones that are desperate to find a way to succeed in life. Okay, so they hang on to that promise, and then the methods themselves will say, and by the way, if the promise doesn't come through, it's because you didn't put yourself in the right mindset.
Next time we do a podcast, I'd love to talk about this with you because I want to know what your manifestation strategy is. I've had multiple famous people about manifestation and spiritual people. The spiritual stuff that you're in, I'm also in, and I've talked to all the names and the shamans and everything. One of the guys said to me, the reason why I make all my clients monogamous, sleeping with one woman instead of going around, famous people, rich people, he has made them all be monogamous with one woman, is because you cannot manifest when you have multiple sexual partners. You're supposed to actually manifest while having sex.
That's a wonderful hypothesis. Show me proof. I'm really sorry. My scientific mind goes like, beautiful story. Okay, I can tell you another story. If a cockroach shows up in your home when you haven't eaten chicken for 16 weeks, that mainly means that cockroaches are attracted to environments that don't like chicken.
Okay.
Okay, beautiful hypothesis. Okay, no scientific proof whatsoever. Right? There are 16,000 other parameters at play for why that cockroach showed up. Okay, chicken is one of them.
Yeah.
Right? An alignment of an observation. By the way, there could be science too. When you're having sex, your mind is not active as it is when you're in other situations. So you could probably connect more to your soul than you are when you're in your thinking form. By the way, that normally happens when if you had in your life, if you've ever had that amazing sexual experience where you felt you were outside this world, right? Yeah, probably a wonderful hypothesis. Cannot say that this is a theory. You cannot say it's true until you prove it. Okay, and there are one of two ways to prove it. One is mathematics, okay, and the other is fact and observation. Okay, fact and observation without fail. Like every time you have sex, you manifest, or every time you manifest when you have sex, it works. Otherwise, this is, I'm so sorry, this is snake oil sales.
I'm going to get more information about that. And next time I see you, I'm going to bring some information. I want to see what your opinion is on it.
And by the way, many of the manifestation teachers are my dear friends. Yeah. Okay? They're my dear friends. And I know they do this with a very positive intention. Okay? The criticism I have, and I say that with a very, very full heart, is the ones that believe in this are the weakest prey. They're the weakest in terms of they're just hanging on to anything. Okay, so you might as well give them a fully complete, theory that is well thought through, well analyzed. Okay, so that it's not miss and hit. Okay, And as I said, Joe Dispenza does this, I think, better than most. Okay.
The people I'm referring to are his students
Yeah.
that have made it, and they have.
And by the way, they have made it, and it could be, pure luck. Okay. But that doesn't mean you can repeatedly sell it to others. I'm gonna be hated.
That's why I want to. That's why I want to table it for you and get you to just destroy it and open it up. You're not going to be hated because we're not using any names. I want to see what your hypothesis is on this.
I've listed that very openly.
Yeah.
It may work. Of course, there are lots of scientific reasons it works, lots of spiritual reasons it works. There are lots of just attention bias reasons it would work. Part of what I spoke about with luck would help that make it work. Yeah.
You're a great brain. You're a great man. All thanks to your son, Ali, because for what happened when he departed, he was the one that was almost the catalyst to push you to go out and educate the world.
Yeah, he's a good man.
And
he educated me.
And it's him that we have to thank that you're out there and showing yourself to everyone.
Yes, sir. I'm honored that you had me. Thank you so much for listening to my crap. And I'm counting on you to edit the bits that will annoy people. And yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mo.
All right, man.
Thank you so much.
All right.
This has been Mo Gawdat. Let's go.